I was on set when it happened, when Jesus pulled back the curtain on the most terrifying moment in human history. Not the rapture itself, but the second after. That one heartbeat of time when everything becomes horrifyingly, irreversibly clear. What he showed me about that single moment. I'm still shaking as I write this. The church has spent decades arguing about the timeline of the rapture, but no one, and I mean no one, has prepared believers for what happens in that first second after the trumpet sounds. Before we begin, tell me one thing you're praying for right now in the comments. I want to pray with you by name. And if you're a true believer in Christ, if you've genuinely repented, if you have saving faith, if you're truly following Jesus, please subscribe. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you've been taught about readiness. I need to know there are believers out there who are awake, watching, and ready. So, it was a Thursday afternoon. Nothing special about it, honestly. We just wrapped a scene where my character is teaching the disciples about the end times. Ironic, right? I stayed in the prayer tent we have on set, just sitting there in the quiet. I do that sometimes, just sit with the Lord after filming those heavier scenes. My Bible was open to 1 Thessalonians 4, the rapture passage, and I was reading it for probably the 1,000th time in my life. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a cry of command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the sound of the trumpet of God. I know this passage. Every Christian knows this passage. We talk about it, debate the timing, make charts and timelines. But as I sat there, this question it bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. Not a theological question, a personal one. Jesus, I whispered, what actually happens? Not the rapture itself, but what happens to the people in that first moment after? The tent went completely still. And I don't mean quiet, I mean still. Like the air itself stopped moving. My heart started pounding, and I just knew he was about to show me something. It was 3:47 p.m. I remember looking at my watch because my hand was already trembling. Then I wasn't just in the tent anymore. I don't know how to explain this. I was still sitting there, still feeling the canvas chair beneath me, but I was also somewhere else, seeing something else. It's like reality split open, and I was looking through a window into a moment that hasn't happened yet. I saw a sanctuary. A big one probably seats 1,000 people. It was Sunday morning, packed to capacity. The worship team was mid-song, hands raised everywhere, lights dim with those atmospheric spotlights moving across the crowd. You know the scene. Contemporary church service, people swaying, some with eyes closed in worship. Then I heard it, a trumpet blast so loud, so powerful, that it seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The sound pierced through everything, through the walls, through my chest, through reality itself, and people started disappearing. But here's what got me what Jesus wanted me to see. It wasn't the disappearing that mattered most. It was the second after. One moment, maybe 200 people in that sanctuary vanished. Just gone. The guitar fell to the stage floor, still plugged in, feedback screaming through the speakers. The drummer's cymbals were still vibrating, but the drummer was gone. 2 of the 5 worship singers remained, mouths open mid-note, suddenly realizing they were singing alone. But the next second, that's what Jesus showed me. The silence broke with the most horrible sound I've ever heard. Not screaming, not yet. It was this collective gasp, this moment of confused shock. Then, almost in unison, the remaining 800 people looked down at their own hands. I watched their faces. God, I watched their faces. A woman in the 3rd row, mid-30s, Bible tucked under her arm. She'd been on the worship team. She looked at her hands, then frantically looked around, and the realization hit her like a physical blow. She doubled over, and the sound that came out of her, it was primal, pure devastation. A man in the back, maybe 60, looked down at his wedding ring. His wife was gone from beside him. He touched the empty seat, and his face. It's like watching someone die inside in real time. He started shaking his head, slowly at first, then violently. No, 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 no. But what Jesus made me focus on, what he wanted me to see, was happening in that very first second. Before the panic, before the chaos, before the screaming started. In that one heartbeat, every person left behind had one identical thought. I could see it on every face, in every eye. And Jesus spoke to me, his voice heavy with something I can only describe as grief. Watch what they realize first. It wasn't, where did everyone go? It wasn't confusion about what happened. In that split second, every single person knew exactly what had just occurred. The rapture was real, and they were still there. And in that same heartbeat, they each had the same devastating thought. I thought I was ready. A youth pastor stood frozen on the stage, his Bible in his hand, and I watched his lips move. He was whispering, "But I believed. I believed in you. I preached about you every Wednesday night." The children's ministry director clutched her phone, staring at a text thread with her teenage daughter who was away at college. The last message from 10 minutes ago: "Love you, Mom, praying for you." But her daughter was gone, and she was here. I watched her face cycle through shock, confusion, and then settle on the most terrible realization. Her daughter had known something she didn't. Jesus let me see inside their thoughts somehow. It's hard to explain, but I knew what they were thinking in that moment. The worship leader who remained. "But I led people to you every Sunday. I wrote worship songs. How did I miss it?" The elder board member. "I sat in leadership meetings. I made decisions for the church. I studied scripture. What did I get wrong?" The Bible study teacher. "I taught the word for 20 years. I memorized chapters. I could quote doctrine. Why am I still here?" And the most haunting one, a woman who ran the church's mission program. She'd just come back from a trip to Guatemala where they'd built a school. She looked at her hands, still calloused from the work, and thought, "I served you. I gave everything. I really thought that's what you wanted. Jesus," I whispered, watching this scene unfold. "They all believe in you. They all served you. They're all here. They're at church. For heaven's sake." "How?" "Keep watching," he said, and his voice was so gentle but so firm. "This is what I need the church to understand." The scene shifted. Still the same moment, still that first second of realization, but now I was seeing it in different locations. A small group Bible study in someone's living room. 8 people, studying end times prophecy, ironically enough. 5 vanished. 3 remained. One of those who remained was the group leader, Bible commentary books spread out around him. He'd been mid-sentence, explaining the Greek meaning of a particular word. A prayer meeting in a church basement. 11 intercessors, known throughout the community for their powerful prayers. 7 gone. 4 remained. The 4 who remained were the ones everyone considered the strongest prayer warriors. A massive mega-church campus, thousands in attendance. Maybe a third of them disappeared. But here's what Jesus made me see. The senior pastor remained. So did most of the paid staff. So did the majority of people whose faces appeared on the church's promotional materials. "Lord," I said, and I was starting to feel sick. "I don't understand. These are your people. They're at church. They're serving. They're performing," Jesus said quietly. "Watch the next 10 seconds." I didn't want to. Honestly, I wanted to close my eyes, to stop seeing this, but I couldn't look away. As reality set in, as those first seconds turned into the first minute, the people who remained started calling out. Not to God, not yet. They called out to each other, asking the same questions. "Did you see who's gone?" "Tom is missing." Tom, who never even came to church. Sarah disappeared. Sarah, who was barely a believer. But Pastor Mike is still here, and he's anointed. The worship leader is still here. She leads us into God's presence. That's when the real horror began. Because in trying to make sense of it, they started listing all the wrong people who were taken. The single mom who joined the church 3 months ago, gone. The janitor who came to Saturday morning prayer, gone. The teenager everyone thought was backslidden, gone. The homeless man who sat in the back, gone. But the deacons remained. The Sunday school superintendent remained. The missions committee chair remained. The guy who tithed 6 figures every year remained. And I watched them start to bargain, right there in that first minute, making excuses. Maybe it wasn't the rapture. Maybe it was something else. Maybe there's still time. "Jesus," I said, and I was crying now, "please, please tell me this isn't how it's going to be." He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was filled with both compassion and something that felt like anger, not at me, but at what had happened to his church. "They think readiness is about what they do for me. They measure their salvation by their service, their knowledge, their position in the church, their spiritual resume. But what I look for in that moment," he paused, and I felt him looking directly at me. "What I look for has nothing to do with what they've built. It has everything to do with what they've become." The scene was still playing. Out. People were panicking now, phones out, trying to call loved ones. Some were on their knees, suddenly praying prayers they should have been praying for years. Others were arguing, insisting this couldn't be real, couldn't be happening. But one image froze in my mind. That woman in the third row, the one who'd been on the worship team, she was still doubled over, and she was whispering something over and over. I knew. Somewhere deep down I knew. I knew something wasn't right. Jesus spoke again. That's what I need them to understand. In that second after the trumpet sounds, no one will be confused about why they were left. Deep in their hearts, in that place they've been ignoring, they all know. They've always known. The vision started to fade, and I was back in the tent, collapsed in my chair, soaking wet with sweat. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my Bible. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been an hour. Time felt strange. Finally, I managed to whisper, what were they missing? What did they not have that they thought they had? And Jesus said, I'll show you tomorrow night. But understand this, what I'm about to reveal will shatter everything the modern church teaches about being ready. They think they know what I'm looking for. They don't. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything. I kept seeing those faces, the shock, the devastation, the horrible realization that they'd been wrong about something they'd built their entire lives around. At 2:34 a.m., I was still awake, sitting on my balcony, when Jesus spoke again. You asked me what happens the second after the trumpet sounds. Now you know it's the moment of ultimate clarity. But here's what terrifies me about my church. He paused, and I waited, barely breathing. They're all expecting to disappear. Every single one of them. They're assuming they're ready. And in that second after the trumpet sounds, the vast majority of them will discover they were wrong. Not because I changed the standard, not because I'm unfair, but because they spent their lives building the wrong thing while thinking they were building my kingdom. I wanted to ask more, needed to ask more, but he said, tomorrow night I'll show you exactly what they're missing, and it's going to break your heart. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those faces, the worship leader, the pastor, the youth director, all frozen in that moment of terrible realization. By the time the sun came up Friday morning, I'd probably had maybe 2 hours of actual rest, and even that was fitful, full of fragments of the vision playing over and over. I went to set, but I wasn't really there, you know. I went through the motions, hit my marks, said my lines, but inside, I was just waiting for night to come, waiting for Jesus to show me what he'd promised. The day dragged on forever. Between takes, I found myself watching the crew, the other actors, everyone around me, and I kept thinking, do they know? Do they have any idea what's coming? But I couldn't say anything. Not yet. I needed to understand it myself first. Finally, we wrapped for the day. I skipped the usual dinner with the cast and drove straight home. I didn't even change out of my costume at first, just sat in my living room, waiting as the sun set and darkness fell over the city. At exactly 11:47 p.m., I felt it again. That stillness, that sense of reality becoming thin, like tissue paper. Are you here? I whispered into the darkness. I'm here, Jesus said, and his voice was heavy with sorrow. Are you ready to see what they're missing? Because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it's going to change how you view everything, everyone in the church. I swallowed hard. I need to know. They need to know. Then watch. The vision opened up around me, but this time it was different. I wasn't looking at the moment after the plays. I was looking at now, present day. Jesus was showing me churches, believers, all these people who think they're ready. The first scene, a Wednesday night service. Maybe 100 people, good-sized crowd for a midweek meeting. The pastor was teaching on spiritual warfare, and he was fired up, pacing the stage, Bible in hand. We need to put on the full armor of God, he shouted. We need to know our authority in Christ. We need to understand our position as kingdom warriors. The congregation was engaged, taking notes, nodding along. This was solid teaching, biblical teaching. I watched, confused, waiting to see what Jesus wanted me to understand. Then he spoke. Look deeper. Look at what I see. And suddenly I could see beyond the surface. It's like having X-ray vision, but for the soul. I could see into their hearts, their minds, their actual spiritual condition. The pastor was passionate, knowledgeable, eloquent. But as I looked at his heart, I saw something that made me gasp. There was no connection. He was speaking truth, but it wasn't flowing from relationship. It was flowing from study, from preparation, from his seminary training. His heart the real deep down core of who he was focused on the delivery, the response, whether people thought he was a good preacher. He knows me, Jesus said quietly, but he doesn't know me. He knows about me. He can teach about me. But when was the last time he sat in my presence, not preparing a sermon, not studying for a message, just being with me? I watched the pastor continue teaching, and I realized he probably couldn't answer that question. Then Jesus showed me the congregation. One by one, he let me see inside their hearts. A woman in the front row, furiously taking notes. Her notebook was full of sermon points, Bible study observations, theological insights, but her heart, it was like a library with no one living in it. So much information, so much knowledge, but no intimate relationship, no real conversation with God. She knew the Bible better than most pastors I've met, but she hadn't actually talked to Jesus, really talked to him like a person talks to someone they love in months. She thinks knowing about me is the same as knowing me, Jesus said. A man in the back, hands raised in worship. But I could see his thoughts, and they weren't on God at all. He was thinking about his neighbor who'd see his car in the church parking lot. He was thinking about how people would notice he was here on a Wednesday night, not just Sunday. He was calculating his spiritual image. He thinks I'm impressed by attendance, Jesus said, and I could hear the sadness in his voice. A couple in the middle section, married 30 years. They came to church together, sat together, even held hands during prayer, but I could see the wall between them. Years of unresolved resentment, unforgiveness, bitter roots that neither of them had dealt with. They looked like the perfect Christian couple, and everyone in their small group thought they were marriage goals. They think they can be right with me while being wrong with each other, Jesus said. The scene shifted. Now I was in a massive megachurch, the kind with fog machines and light shows and a coffee bar in the lobby. Thousands of people, incredible worship band, pastor who was known nationally. Show me someone who's ready, I said, suddenly desperate. Please, Lord, show me someone who would be taken. Jesus was quiet for a moment. Then, there, look there. I followed his direction and saw a janitor, an older Hispanic man, maybe 70, emptying trash cans in the back while the service went on. No one paid attention to him. He was invisible to the congregation. But when I looked at his heart, oh God, it was on fire. Pure, burning love for Jesus. He was praying as he worked, and his prayers weren't fancy or theological. He was just talking to Jesus like you'd talk to your best friend. Jesus, I'm so grateful. You saved me. I don't deserve your love, but you gave it anyway. Help me show your love to someone today, even if it's just, I don't know, just smiling at someone who needs it. His heart was completely, utterly focused on Jesus, not on himself, not on what others thought, not on his position or reputation, just Jesus. He'll be taken, Jesus said. In that second after the trumpet sounds, he'll be gone, and the senior pastor of this church will be left standing on that stage, wondering what went wrong. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Why? Why will the pastor be left? Watch him. Really watch him. I looked at the senior pastor. Brilliant teacher, charismatic speaker, the kind of guy who could hold 10,000 people in the palm of his hand. He was preaching about God's love, and it was powerful, moving. People were crying. But then Jesus let me see backstage, so to speak. Earlier that day, this pastor had screamed at his assistant over a scheduling mistake, not corrected, screamed, belittled her in front of others. Then he'd walked on stage and preached about God's kindness. That morning, he'd ignored a call from his adult daughter for the third time that week because he was too busy, too important. The night before, he'd looked at his bank account, his personal one, not the church's, and felt a rush of satisfaction at the number. His salary was substantial, his book deals were lucrative, and he felt successful. Blessed, he told himself. God has blessed me because I'm doing his work. He's built a kingdom, Jesus said, but it's not mine. It has his name on it, not mine. He thinks because people are getting saved in his church, I'm pleased with him. But he doesn't see that I'm saving people despite him, not because of him. And his own heart, he hasn't let me touch the dark places in years. He's too busy managing his empire to let me transform his character. The vision shifted again, and I was seeing inside a small group meeting. 8 people, studying the book of Revelation, trying to figure out the timeline of the end times. They had charts, commentaries, 3 different translations of the Bible. They've spent 6 months studying prophecy, Jesus said. They can tell you about the sealed judgments and the bowl judgments. They can debate pre-trib versus post-trib. They know the theories about the Antichrist and the mark of the beast. That's good, isn't it? I asked, knowing your word. Look at what they're missing. I looked at each person in the group. Not one of them had invited their neighbors to church. Not one of them had shared the gospel with a coworker in the last year. 2 of them hadn't forgiven their own family members for old wounds. One was having an emotional affair with a colleague, sending texts that crossed lines, telling himself it wasn't physical, so it didn't count. Another was secretly watching pornography, thinking no one knew, thinking it didn't matter because he was working on it. And they were studying the end times, preparing for Jesus' return by analyzing charts and timelines, while their actual lives, their actual hearts remained unchanged. They think knowing the schedule of my return is more important than being ready for it, Jesus said, and his voice broke my heart. They want to be right about the timeline more than they want to be right with me. I was crying now, overwhelmed by what I was seeing. Jesus, how many people who think they're ready actually aren't? The scene changed again. I was looking at hundreds of churches simultaneously, like watching multiple TV screens at once. Pentecostal churches where people spoke in tongues and prophesied, Baptist churches with solid biblical teaching, charismatic churches with powerful worship, Methodist, Presbyterian, non-denominational, all different but all Christian. And in every single one, Jesus showed me the same thing: people who looked ready but weren't, people who had the external markers of faith but were missing the internal reality. The number will shock you, Jesus said quietly. The vast majority of people in those pews, in those seats, think they're ready. They've been taught that if they believe certain doctrines, if they attend church, if they serve in ministry, if they read their Bibles, they're saved. And those things matter, but they're not the core. They've made the externals the main thing, and the main thing, transformation of the heart through genuine, intimate relationship with me, has become optional. I watched a youth group meeting where teenagers were being taught to defend their faith against atheist arguments. Good teaching, important teaching, but not one conversation about actual prayer life, about hearing God's voice, about letting Him change them from the inside out. I watched a men's accountability group where they confessed surface sins and prayed surface prayers, but no one talked about the deep heart issues, the pride, the selfish ambition, the ways they used people, the darkness they protected. I watched a women's Bible study where they analyzed scripture with impressive precision, but when one woman started to share a real struggle, a deep, messy, vulnerable struggle, the others got uncomfortable and quickly moved back to the study questions. They've created a form of Christianity that looks like me but doesn't require transformation, Jesus said. It's Christianity as a belief system, as a social group, as a set of activities, but it's not Christianity as a relationship that changes everything about who they are. But Lord, I said, desperate now, what about grace? What about by grace through faith? Are you saying works save us? No, he said firmly. Works don't save anyone. But real faith, saving faith, transforms. It has to. If someone says they have faith but their life never changes, if their character never grows more like mine, if they never deal with their sin, if they never develop actual intimacy with me, then what kind of faith do they actually have? I thought about the people I'd seen in the vision: the pastor who preached love but treated his staff with contempt, the couple who sat in church holding hands while harboring bitterness, the Bible study group who knew prophecy but didn't know me. They've been taught that faith is intellectual agreement, Jesus continued, that if they believe the right things about me, they're saved. But even the demons believe in me. Real faith, the faith that saves, surrenders, it transforms, it produces fruit. Not perfect fruit, not sinless living, but actual change, progressive sanctification, growing into my image. The vision shifted one more time. I was back in that sanctuary from the first night, that moment after the rapture. But this time, Jesus let me hear the prayers of the people who were left behind. Jesus, I believed in you. I went to church. Lord, I served in ministry. God, I read my Bible every day. Jesus, I gave my tithes. Lord, I worshiped you. And then I heard Jesus' response, and it shattered me. I never knew you. Not, I stopped knowing you. Not, you lost your salvation. But, I never knew you. They thought they knew me, Jesus said softly. But knowing about me isn't the same as knowing me. They could quote my words, but never had a real conversation with me. They could teach my principles, but never let me touch their hidden places. They could perform for me, but never surrendered to me. I was on my knees now, in my living room shaking. Lord, how do we know? How do we know if we really know you? I'll show you tomorrow night, he said. I'll show you exactly what I look for, exactly how someone can know they're truly ready. But tonight, I need you to understand the problem. The church has reduced salvation to a transaction, say a prayer, believe certain things, and you're in. But I never taught that. I taught transformation. I taught surrender. I taught that following me costs everything and changes everything. The vision was fading, but I could still see fragments, all those faces in those churches, all those people who were so certain they were ready. Tomorrow, Jesus said, I'll show you the test, the actual test, the one thing I look for in that second after the trumpet sounds, and I'll show you how to pass it. Then he was gone, and I was alone in my living room, the weight of what I'd seen pressing down on me like a physical force. I looked at my own life, my own heart, and for the first time in years, I asked myself the terrifying question, am I really ready, or do I just think I am? I didn't go to set on Saturday. I called in, told them I was sick, which wasn't exactly a lie. I felt sick, spiritually sick, if that makes sense. Everything I'd seen over the past 2 nights had turned my understanding of Christianity inside out, and I needed answers. I spent the day in prayer, but honestly, most of it was just sitting in silence, waiting. I couldn't form words, couldn't organize my thoughts into coherent prayers. I just sat there, aware of God's presence, aware of my own desperate need to understand. As the day wore on, I found myself thinking about my own life. I'd given everything to this role, to portraying Jesus. People told me all the time how it had changed their faith, brought them closer to God. That should count for something, right? But after what Jesus had shown me, I wasn't sure anymore. I'd served in ministry for years before this, led worship, taught Bible studies, gone on mission trips. I'd read my Bible, prayed daily, sometimes for hours. By every external measure, I was ready. But was I really? The sun set, darkness fell, and I waited. At 1:23 a.m., he came. I was sitting on my couch, and suddenly the room was filled with, I don't even know how to describe it. Not light, exactly, but presence. So strong I could barely breathe. Are you ready to see the test? Jesus asked. My voice came out as a whisper. Yes, please, I need to know. The test is simple, he said, so simple that the religious world has completely missed it. They've created complex theological systems, doctrinal statements, standards of holiness, but what I look for in that second, after the trumpet sounds, can be reduced to one question. I waited, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. Do you love me? I blinked. That was it? That was the test? I know what you're thinking, Jesus said, and I could hear something like gentle amusement in his voice. You're thinking it can't be that simple. But let me show you what I mean by love. Because the word has been so diluted, so misused, that most people have no idea what I'm actually asking. The vision opened again, but this time it was different. I wasn't watching other people. I was watching myself. I saw myself from 6 months ago in my trailer on set. I'd just finished filming a particularly emotional scene, and I was exhausted. My phone rang. It was my mom. She called every Saturday like clockwork just to check in. I let it go to voicemail because I was too tired to deal with the conversation. You were too tired to talk to your mother, Jesus said softly. But you spent 45 minutes that same day scrolling through social media, looking at what people were saying about the show. I winced. It was true. Now watch this, he said. I saw myself from 3 months ago, on a Sunday morning. I'd gone to church. I try to go when I'm not filming on location. During worship, I was aware that the woman next to me was crying. Not quietly either, she was clearly going through something. I glanced at her, felt a nudge to ask if she was okay, to offer to pray with her, but I didn't. I turned back to the worship, told myself she probably wanted privacy, told myself it would be awkward. You felt me prompting you to reach out to her. Jesus said, you heard my voice clearly, but you chose comfort over obedience. You chose what was easier for you over what I was asking you to do. Jesus, I'm sorry, I'm not condemning you, he interrupted gently. I'm showing you what love actually looks like. Because this is what most of my church doesn't understand. They think love is a feeling, an emotion, something that just exists. But love is a choice. It's action. It's obedience. It's sacrifice. The scene shifted. I was watching the janitor from the night before, the one who would be taken in the rapture. I saw him at home, early in the morning, before he went to work. He was on his knees in his small apartment, praying. But it wasn't fancy prayer. He was just talking to Jesus. Lord, I don't got much, but everything I got is yours. My time, my money, my energy, it's all yours. Tell me what you want me to do today, and I'll do it. Then I watched his day unfold. He went to the church to work, cleaning bathrooms, emptying trash, mopping floors. Nobody thanked him. Most people didn't even see him. But he did everything with this quiet joy, this sense of worship. Around lunchtime, he was cleaning the kitchen area when one of the office staff came in. She was on the phone, and he could hear from her conversation that she was dealing with something difficult, a sick relative maybe. When she hung up, she looked overwhelmed, like she might cry. The janitor didn't hesitate. In his broken English, he said, "Excuse me, miss. I hear you have trouble. Can I pray for you?" She looked surprised. Most people looked through him, not at him, but she nodded, and he prayed the simplest, most heartfelt prayer. Nothing eloquent, just genuine. When he finished, she was crying, but in a different way. "Thank you," she whispered. "I really needed that." "See?" Jesus said to me. He heard my voice, and he obeyed immediately. No hesitation, no calculation, no worrying about what people would think. He just loved me enough to do what I asked. That's the test. That's what I look for. "But Lord," I said, "he's just one person. Are you saying the test is about what, random acts of kindness? Being nice to people?" "No," Jesus said firmly. "It's not about being nice. It's about loving me so much that my voice becomes the most important voice in your life. It's about knowing me so intimately that you recognize when I'm speaking and caring about my heart more than your own comfort." He showed me another scene. A woman I recognized from the first vision she'd been left behind in that sanctuary, but now I was seeing her life before the rapture. She was at a church board meeting discussing the budget. Someone suggested increasing the amount they gave to missions, specifically to help refugees. It would mean cutting from other areas of the budget. She argued against it, passionately. "We need to be wise stewards," she said. "We need to take care of our own building, our own programs, our own people first." But as I watched, I could see Jesus there in that room, unseen by everyone, and he was grieving, because he'd been asking this church to care for refugees for 2 years. He'd been speaking to multiple people on that board, including this woman. But she'd been more concerned about the building fund, about keeping the church's programs running, about maintaining what they'd built. She couldn't hear my voice over the voice of her own agenda, Jesus said. She prayed every day, read her Bible every day, but when I asked her to do something that was uncomfortable, that required sacrifice, she said no. And she didn't even realize she was saying no to me. She thought she was being responsible. "So the test is obedience?" I asked. "The test is love," Jesus corrected. "Real love produces obedience. Not grudging, reluctant obedience, but willing, eager obedience. When you love someone, truly love them, their desires become your desires. Their heart becomes your heart. You want to please them not because you're afraid of punishment, but because their joy is your joy." He showed me more examples. A man who was left behind. I'd seen him in one of the churches from the second night. Jesus let me see his prayer life. He prayed, sure, every morning 20 minutes, like clockwork. But his prayers were all about his needs, his wants, his problems. He never asked Jesus what he wanted. Never sat in silence to listen. Never asked, "What breaks your heart today? How can I partner with you in your work?" He treated me like a divine vending machine, Jesus said sadly. Put in prayer, get out blessings. He never asked what I wanted from him. And when I did speak to him, when I prompted him to mentor the young man at his office who was searching for truth, when I asked him to reconcile with his brother after 20 years of silence, when I nudged him to give sacrificially to that struggling family, he ignored me every time. He loved his comfort more than he loved me. Then Jesus showed me someone who would be taken. A teenage girl, maybe 16. She wasn't perfect. She struggled with anxiety, sometimes doubted, wasn't always the best at reading her Bible. But I watched her life, and I saw something beautiful. She actually talked to Jesus, not just prayed at him, but talked with him. Throughout her day, she'd have these conversations. "Jesus, I'm scared about this test. Help me trust you. Lord, I think you want me to apologize to my friend, but I'm nervous. Give me courage. God, I feel like maybe you're asking me to share my faith with that girl at lunch. Is that you? Okay, I'll do it. And she did. She messed up, sometimes said the wrong thing, got awkward, didn't always follow through, but she was trying. She was listening. She cared about what Jesus wanted more than she cared about her own reputation. She loves me, Jesus said simply. Not perfectly, but genuinely. And that love produces fruit not because she's trying to earn salvation, but because love can't help but express itself in action. I was starting to understand, but I needed to hear it clearly. So, in that second after the trumpet sounds, what exactly are you looking for? Jesus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was tender but absolutely clear. I'm looking for people who know my voice and have been following it. People who have cultivated such an intimate relationship with me that obedience has become natural. Not perfect, I'm not expecting perfection. But people who have been in a real relationship with me, not just a religious routine. People who love me enough that my desires have been shaping their desires. People who have been surrendering to my transforming work, not just maintaining an image of godliness. In that second, every person will know deep in their spirit whether they truly know me or just know about me, whether they've been in relationship with me or just going through religious motions, whether they've been listening to my voice or just the voice of Christian culture. He showed me one final scene. Two men, both pastors, both standing in their respective churches when the rapture happens. One remains, one disappears. From the outside, you couldn't tell them apart. Same education, same theology, same activities, same appearance of godliness, but inside everything was different. The one who remained had stopped hearing Jesus' voice years ago. He still preached, still prayed, still led, but it was all mechanical. He'd replaced relationship with routine, intimacy with information. Jesus would speak to him about his pride, his marriage, his hidden sins, and he'd rationalize, excuse, explain away. He loved his position, his reputation, his ministry more than he loved Jesus. The one who was taken wasn't famous. His church was small, but he knew Jesus' voice intimately. When Jesus spoke to him about his character, he listened. When Jesus asked him to do hard things, he obeyed. When Jesus convicted him of sin, he repented. He wasn't perfect, but he was surrendered. And that surrender, that love, that intimacy, that's what Jesus was looking for. So how do we know? I asked, my voice breaking. How do we know if we're ready? Ask yourself, Jesus said gently. Not do I believe the right things? Not do I do the right things? Ask yourself, do I know Jesus' voice? When he speaks to me about my sin, about his calling, about someone he wants me to reach, do I listen? Do I obey? Have I cultivated intimacy with him or just knowledge about him? Ask yourself, what do I actually love? Do I love my comfort, my reputation, my ministry, my theology? Or do I love Jesus more than all of that? Enough to surrender everything? Enough to let him transform the hidden places? Enough to obey even when it's costly? And here's the simplest test, he continued. Can you hear my voice? Right now, in your daily life, do you know when I'm speaking to you? Because I'm always speaking, always inviting, always calling my sheep. And my sheep hear my voice. The vision was fading now, but Jesus had one more thing to say. The church has made salvation complicated. They've created steps and formulas and theological systems. But I made it simple. Love me with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That kind of love, real, surrendered, costly love, transforms everything. It produces obedience, holiness, fruit, not to earn salvation, but because that's what love does. In that second after the trumpet sounds, I'm not checking people's theology papers or their ministry resumes. I'm looking at their hearts. And the question is simple, do they love me? Have they been in relationship with me? Do they know my voice? Have they been following me? Then he was gone, and I was alone in my living room again. But this time, I wasn't devastated. I was, I don't know, sobered, challenged, but also hopeful. Because the test wasn't impossible. It wasn't about perfection. It was about relationship, about love, about knowing Jesus and letting him transform you from the inside out. I got on my knees right there at 2:47 a.m. and I prayed a different kind of prayer than I'd ever prayed before. Jesus, I don't want to just know about you. I want to know you. I don't want to just serve you. I want to love you. Teach me to hear your voice. Help me to care about what you care about. Transform my heart. I don't want to be someone who looks ready but isn't. I want to be ready, really ready. And I heard him, clear as day. Now you understand. Now you're ready to help others understand. So here's what I'm asking you, everyone watching this. Are you ready? Not do you go to church, not do you read your Bible, not do you serve in ministry. Are you ready? Do you know Jesus' voice? When he speaks to you about your character, your choices, your hidden sins, do you listen? Do you love him enough to obey even when it's hard? Because the trumpet is coming. We don't know when, but it's coming. And in that second after it sounds, every single one of us will know with crystal clarity whether we were truly ready or just thought we were. Don't let that second be the moment you discover you were wrong. Here's what I want you to do. Right now, stop and ask Jesus, do I really know you? Am I in real relationship with you? Or just going through religious motions? And then listen. Actually listen. He'll tell you the truth. He loves you too much to let you believe a lie about your spiritual condition. And if you realize you've been going through motions, if you realize you've been building a religious life but not cultivating relationship, it's not too late. It's not too late. Surrender to him now. Not just intellectually, but actually surrender. Let him into the hidden places. Start listening for his voice. Begin having real conversations with him. Let him transform you. The test is simple. Do you love Jesus? Is he the center of your life, or just a part of your life? Because if you love him, really love him, everything else will follow. The obedience, the transformation, the fruit, not perfectly, but genuinely. In that second after the trumpet sounds, may we all hear him say, "Well done. You know me. You've loved me. Come home." Don't wait until that second to find out if you're ready. Find out now. While there's still time, I'm praying for everyone who hears this, that God would open your eyes to see where you really are spiritually, that he'd give you the courage to be honest with yourself and with him, and that he'd draw you into the kind of intimate, transforming relationship that will make you ready for his return. The trumpet is coming. Make sure you're not just ready in theory, make sure you're ready in reality. May God bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you, and may you know him, truly know him, before that day comes.